Today I'm going to take a look at yet another Arch-based Linux distribution. This Linux distribution is called MagpieOS. MagpieOS is a Bangladeshi Linux distribution. It comes in two different desktop flavors, I believe. They offer a GNOME edition and they offer an XFCE edition. I'm going to take a look at the GNOME edition today. MagpieOS has been requested by several of the channel viewers, so let's take a look. So, MagpieOS. I'm going to take a look at their website here at magpieos.net. And just reading a little bit from the blurbs on their website. It's a new Arch Linux derivative distro from a Bangladeshi developer. And then, of course, we got a download link for MagpieOS 2.2 is the current version. And again, we have the GNOME desktop and the XFCE desktop for downloads. And really, there's not much else on the page. You know, I like to have more than just, hey, here's my Linux distribution, here's a link to the download page. There's really not much else to their website. I have no idea why the Bangladeshi developer behind this distro created it. I don't know what makes this distro different than the 100 or so other Arch-based Linux distributions I've reviewed on this channel in the past 6 months. I really don't know anything about it, so we're kind of going in this blind. But let me go ahead and download the ISO, and I'm going to install this inside a virtual machine today. Okay, so the ISO size was 1.7 gigabytes in size. Let's go ahead and get this installed here. So I'm loading this up inside VirtualBox. And we have the boot menu here. We have the options of boot MagpieOS, boot existing OS, run memtest, hardware info, reboot, and power off. I'm going to go ahead and just boot directly into MagpieOS. Let's see if I can get a bigger screen resolution here. May take a minute or so to boot into the live environment. When you're booting off a live medium like a ISO or a live USB stick or a live DVD, sometimes it takes a while to actually boot into your live environment. And still waiting. I'm kind of curious about Magpie, though. I really like Arch. I really like Arch-based Linux distributions. I'm not sure exactly what, MagpieOS GNOME is going to offer me that something like Antergos GNOME wouldn't offer me. Anyway, we are at the login manager here. The live user is called live user, and I guess we don't have to enter a password for the live user. It automatically logs us in, so that's good. I really hate when these live desktop environments ask for a username and password, and you have no idea what the username and password is.
Welcome to MagpieOS. Are you ready to start your Linux journey? It's very simple. First, you have to choose language, key maps, then have to select partitions where Magpie will be installed. Finally, have to create user and password.
Alright, are you guys hearing this desktop audio? I actually wasn't expecting that, so I hope that I'm recording the desktop audio. I sometimes don't even have OBS set up to record desktop audio, because usually I don't play anything, on my desktop for desktop sounds or anything during these videos. But that's an interesting little audio clip there. It's kind of strange, though, because you got a black screen for 30 seconds, and then you listen to that audio clip. And it's in English, which, not everyone speaks English, so that's kind of strange that you have that 30-second clip of somebody speaking in English. What about other languages? So, really, I think they could just drop that. There's no reason to have that. Anyway, back to the installer. The installer automatically launches. I like that. This is the Calamaris installer. Language, English, has already been chosen for us. That's correct. It has correctly chosen the central time zone in the US for me. That's correct. It has correctly chosen English US for my keyboard. That is correct. And we can test it out in that little test field. Partitions. Erase disk lets MagpieOS automatically set up our partitions. Or we can do manual partitioning, set up the partitions ourselves. This is useful if you're dual booting or you want to create like a separate home partition or something like that. I'm just going to choose erase disk and let MagpieOS have the entire 15 gig hard drive of this virtual machine I created. It looks like with letting it do the automatic partitioning, it's going to create like an 11 gig extended 4 file system and then a 4 gig swap. The 4 gig swap is kind of wasted space in a VM, but I should have plenty of space. All right, we need to create our username. I'm going to create the user DT. Need to create a password for the user DT, a strong password. All right, log in automatically without asking for a password is ticked on. I'm going to tick that off. I want to be asked for a password to log in. Use the same password for the administrator account is ticked on. I'm going to leave that ticked on. This allows me to not have to remember 2 different passwords. The DT home user password is the same as the root password. All right. Summary, location, looks good. Keyboard, looks good. Partition scheme, looks good. Click Next, and it should go ahead and format the drive and write to the disk. The installation's beginning is probably going to take somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes for the installation to complete. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. And the installation is complete. That took just a few minutes. And when the installation is complete, you need to go down here, bottom left-hand corner, click Restart Now. And then click Done, and this will reboot your machine. If you're doing this on physical hardware, this is where you would take the live USB stick out of the machine and then reboot. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. All right, so restarting my freshly installed MagpieOS 2.2. Let's go ahead and make it full screen. And we wait for the GNOME desktop environment to load up. Okay, and we got to our login manager very fast. Even in a VM, I didn't give this VM a whole lot of resources either. 1 core of my 6-core CPU, I gave it 2 gigs of RAM, so not a lot of RAM given to this VM either. And I did that kind of on purpose. A lot of times I give these VMs like 2 cores of my CPU and 4, sometimes even 6 gigs of RAM. That's a little too much. I know some people actually try to install Linux on older machines. Linux is great for installing on older machines, so I don't want to give the machine, too many resources here in these virtual machines. If it struggles at all, with 1 core, my CPU, and 2 gigs of RAM, I'll let you know. I know Magpie surely can handle, if I gave it, half of my cores of CPUs and, 8 gigs of RAM, yeah, it's going to run like a champ. That doesn't do much to test it out, though. Anyway, MagpieOS, again, this is GNOME. It looks like they have some extensions installed by default. Several, actually. I kind of like that. I really don't like the plain vanilla GNOME shell at the top. Looks like they have the activities menu, of course. Then you have your places menu. Let me get rid of the activities. Of course, you have your standard calendar here in the center, time and date. But then we have some applets. It looks like some network applets here. That's pretty cool. Battery, network. Yep. And then, of course, the session stuff here on the power symbol. And it looks like they have some kind of a dash to dock extension here at the bottom, except instead of being on the left, which is usually the standard place for it, they've put that on the bottom of the screen. I actually kind of like it on the left. It makes sense to have your docks on the left because so much of everything else happens on the left. Your activities menu and your places menu is on the left. If you have a browser open full screen, the forward and back buttons are on the left. Depending on whether you put your window decorations on the left or right, sometimes those are also on the left-hand side of the screen. You rarely are coming to the right side of your screen for anything, and certainly not to the bottom of the screen. So I would prefer to set this on the left if I was setting this up for myself, but I don't hate that they've chosen to put it on the bottom of the screen. Anyway, I'm going to go through all the applications installed by default here, and it looks like they have some pretty interesting applications installed. Exerciser. I have absolutely no idea what that program is. That is the first time I have ever heard of Exerciser. It looks like I'm getting errors, Python errors, so it's a Python app, which would make sense. I did read a little bit about Magpie before I installed it. The developer, the main dev, is a Bangladeshi developer, and he is a Python programmer, or an aspiring Python programmer. So that would make sense for him to have, a lot of Python apps installed. This is an interactive Python accessibility explorer. So it's for accessibility, I guess for those with disabilities, maybe? I'm not sure, but it's throwing up errors here. All right, when we have our standard add remove software application, which in Arch-based distros is usually, I believe they call this PAMAC, is the name of the GUI Package Manager. I typically do all my package management stuff in the terminal, of course, with Pacman. But PAMAC is a fine GUI package manager. You can search by category. You can add, remove repositories. You can search through all your installed apps. You can update the system. If you want to search for a package, there's a search field here you can search for. So, pretty standard for a GUI package manager. We have the Avahi server installed. We have BleachBit, which is a system cleaning utility. So it will clean up like package cache and, log files, and, it'll recover some space on your drive, basically. It gets rid of a bunch of unused CRUD on your system. All right, we have books. I believe this is a standard GNOME app called GNOME Books. I don't have any books for us to look at, but it's there. Boxes is a virtualization program. It's a hypervisor, similar to VirtualBox, VMware. Bracero is a standard disk burning utility. It's a GNOME app for burning DVDs and CDs. Very few people have a need to burn CDs and DVDs anymore, so I'm not sure if this is necessary to include on the ISO these days, but it is a standard GNOME app. Calculator, of course, is the standard GNOME calculator. It's a calculator. If you've seen one calculator, you've seen them all. The cool thing about the GNOME calculator is it does have a few different modes. We have advanced mode. We have financial mode, programming mode, which is probably useful for the main dev of Magpie here, and keyboard mode. So, one of the nicer calculators, if you do a lot of calculating, the GNOME calculator. And we have calendar, we have Cheese, which is a webcam app. Then we have Chess, which of course is a game. Clocks, contacts, dev help, we have dictionary, documents. This is the GNOME documents. And no documents found. Documents from your online accounts. You have document collections. Of course, I have nothing to view here in the VM, but I'm sure it's a fine program. Moving down, wow, we're actually going to have quite a bit of stuff installed. We've got 3 pages of apps installed. Getting to the bottom line of the first page, eLinks. I'm not exactly sure what eLinks is. Is that the terminal web browser? A terminal emulator for the GNOME desktop. Oh, this is GNOME terminal, but eLinks is a terminal app. Enter URL. So how about google.com? Yeah, this is a terminal-based web browser, eLinks. I prefer Lynx, Lynx, for a web terminal-based web browser, but eLinks, I'm sure, works very similar. There's also another one called Lynx, Links. There's several more terminal-based web browsers. Pretty cool, though, if you're not viewing pages that require you to view images and video, because a lot of times when you're reading news articles and blogs, you really don't need images, you don't need graphics, you don't need ads especially. So terminal-based web browsing makes a lot of sense, actually. We have Evolution for our email client here. Evolution takes a long time to load here in this VM. Again, I didn't give this VM, just a ton of system resources, but that took a few seconds to load. Anyways, your standard email client. Evolution 3.28.1. That's a GNOME app. We have the GNOME Files, which is the Nautilus file manager, standard file manager in the GNOME desktop. And then we have FileZilla, which is a FTP program, File Transfer Protocol. It's for uploading files to remote servers, say a web server. We have Firefox as our default browser. Let's see. Firefox taking a little time to load too. GNOME is very, very heavy on system resources. That's another reason why I gave this VM 1 core of my 6-core CPU and only 2 gigs of RAM. So you guys can see how slow GNOME is. You know, how slow it would be on older hardware. This is not something you would want to put on a machine that's 5 years old, maybe. Certainly not something that's 10 years old. It would run like a dog. So this is Firefox 59.0.2, Firefox Quantum. Let's close these tabs out. All right, and the last program here on the first page here is, let me get my head out of the way, Git-G. Now this, of course, is going to be some kind of Git client for managing your Git repos. This is probably on the ISO because of the developer using Git in some way. I'm not going to play around with that here any further. All right, let's scroll down one more page. All right, the next set of applications. GIMP is installed, the GNU image manipulation program. It's basically our free and open source Photoshop alternative. We have Gparted, which is our partition editor. That is useful, especially if you were using MagpieOS as like a live USB stick. Gparted is a great thing to have on like a system rescue stick. We have IPython. Again, we're going to have some Python stuff because the main dev is a Python programmer. We have LFTP, another file transfer protocol program. We have LibreOffice. We have Base, Calc, Draw, Impress, Math, and Writer. We have the GNOME Maps. It's GNOME's map utility. A lot of these GNOME programs don't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I actually do really like the GNOME Maps utility. It's pretty cool. You can zoom in, you can... Well, I might have zoomed in a little too far there. I was using the scroll wheel of my mouse. Anyway, GNOME Maps is actually pretty neat. Alright, we also have MPV as our media player. We have Multi-Writer, which is going to be a USB writer. This is for creating live USBs. You know, so you can distro hop, so you can install more Linux distros on your machines. We have GNOME's music. We have the network tools. We have a pen drive. What is it? Pen drive formatter? Okay, this is to format your USB stick before you write to it. We have GNOME Photos, which is a photo manager. Then we have some Qt stuff for managing the Qt toolkit. And again, that's development stuff. We have Recipes, which is a GNOME app. GNOME Recipes. Anyway, looks like a pretty cool app. I'm not into, collecting and viewing recipes. I cook, but I'm not that into it. Then we have our settings manager, of course. Standard settings manager, control panel, if you will, in GNOME. Oh, background. Let's see what kind of backgrounds we're able to choose here. And this looks like the standard GNOME wallpaper pack. I don't know, some of these look like I've seen them before, some of them I haven't, I'm not sure. But there's actually some pretty cool stuff here. I've seen most of these here at the top. I think some of the ones toward the bottom, like I don't remember this guy here shooting this, what is it, an AK-47 here, kind of dressed up in some funny clothes. I haven't seen that wallpaper before. This one here, this blue with some butterflies, I don't think I've seen that one before either. That's actually a pretty neat wallpaper. We might just leave that one up. Anyway, back to the applications that are installed. Simple Scan for scanning utility. Simple Screen Recorder for recording your desktop. Very similar to how I'm recording my desktop to make this video. Simple Screen Recorder will allow you to do that. SM Player is another media player, multimedia player for playing videos for the most part. We have the GNOME Software Center. And it's your standard GUI Software Center. You can search with categories, and you can also update the system here. Of course, you have GNOME software. You also had PAMAC, which is a Gui Package Manager. Of those two utilities, you will probably find PAMAC to be the better tool to use. Not that GNOME software is a bad program, but PAMAC is a little bit more powerful, a little bit more, it's an older project too, a little bit more mature. All right. We have our software update tool. Not exactly sure what this is. This may be PAMAC again. Yep. This will be PAMAC checking for updates. And we do have some updates available. This ISO, the date on it was about 3 weeks old, I think. Being an Arch-based distro, it's a rolling release distro, so there will be quite a number of packages that could be updated. I'm not going to take an update here on camera. We have Sound Recorder. Then we have the subcategory here called Sundry. In it, we have the Adobe Flash Player, the dcomp editor, and iBus. We have SUSE Studio Writer, which is another USB writer. Again, I'm assuming a lot of these, like writing USB stick writer utilities. Of course, a lot of the Qt stuff, a lot of the Python stuff. Again, the main dev is, of course, a programmer, a developer. And he's probably he made this distro mainly for himself to use originally. I don't think this is meant for the masses necessarily. This seems like more of a garage kind of distro, an indie distro. We have sysprof, which is, I'm not sure actually what sysprof is. Let's see. If we get an about page here, the about does not tell me anything. Learn more about sysprof, and then gives me a link. I guess I could click on the link and go to a website, but why wouldn't you tell me what your program is? And this is another thing with developers, you guys that, create these programs. You should tell us what your program is. If I can't tell what your program is because you gave it a funny name, that's fine. But when I open your program, I should be able to tell what it is. If I can't, when I click on About in the menu system, that should give me some kind of description of what your program is. It is a profiling tool that helps in finding functions and what a program uses most of the time. Okay. And it's a GNOME app. Okay. Okay. And of course, makes sense. It's a GNOME app. I'm complaining about not being able to tell what the program is. GNOME. A lot of the GNOME apps have that same problem. All right. We also have the text editor. Standard text editor in GNOME is gedit. We have to do, which of course would be a to-do list. I'm not sure if I've seen this one before. It looks like a GNOME app though. Yeah, it's GNOME to do 3.28.0. I'm not sure if that's something that a lot of GNOME distros include by default, because I don't remember coming across that too often in my reviews when I review GNOME distros. We have the GNOME Tweaks. This is the tweak tool for, modifying themes, icons, etc. For example, the theme. The current theme is Adapta, but it does come with a variety of themes that we could choose from. For example, what if I wanted to go with Evopop? That could be a cool theme. How about, I don't know Vimix. That's the first time I've heard of that one. But that looks like a pretty cool theme. It's kind of a flat theme with some interesting colored window decorations here. Vimix Barrel. What is Vimix Barrel? Looks like the same sort of thing. Vimix Light. Just a lighter color. Same theme, basically. Just a slightly different variation of it. I'm going to go back to the standard Adapta theme that was on by default. It's a really nice theme. Icons. We have the Papyrus icons by default, but we have the option of Numix, Magpie, ePapyrus, and of course the default GNOME icon set, the Adwaita theme, which is horribly ugly. The GNOME shell theme, right now it's set to Adapta Nocto, but we could set that to Evopop or Vimix or Adapta. Again, Adapta. I think Adapta Nocto was the default one. We'll just leave it on the default. Alright, and rounding out the last of the applications here in the menu, we have a utility subcategory, which is going to be where you would find your archive manager for zip and unzip. We have a character map, disk usage analyzer, the GNOME disk utility, our document viewer for viewing PDF files and such, fonts, help, image viewer, logs, the remote desktop, screenshot, that's a screenshot utility for taking screenshots, of course, the system monitor, and the GNOME terminal. Let's open up this system monitor. Let's see how we're doing on system resources. I will say, even though I didn't give this VM a lot of system resources, it doesn't feel that sluggish for being GNOME. GNOME usually, like I said, it takes a lot of system resources, but everything seems to be opening and closing, reasonably well. CPU percentage is using, a lot of CPU, 24% or so, 25, 29%, fluctuates a little bit. But again, I only gave this machine 1 core of my 6-core CPU. That's not horrible. Memory's pretty bad though. 1.4 gigs of memory of the 2 gigs I gave this machine. That's really, really high. I don't like that. Alright, and finishing this out, we have UXTerm, which is another terminal emulator. We have the GNOME Video app, Vim, which is a terminal-based text editor, GNOME Weather, GNOME Web, Xterm, and ZenMap. Not sure what ZenMap is. You are trying to run ZenMap with a non-root user. Some Nmap options need root privileges. Okay. Is it a networking utility? Yeah. Nmap is a free and open source utility for network exploration and security auditing. Alright, so now that we've taken a look at all the applications installed by default, one thing I want to do, I want to go back to the GNOME Tweak tool. And we played a little bit with the themes and icons, but really what I want to do is check out the extensions installed by default. What do they have here? We have alternate tab, which is a substitute for alt tab. That's not turned on. We have an applications menu, adds a category-based menu for applications. That is not turned on. If I turn it on, I like that. We get a standard normal menu that's categorized with subcategories. You know what? I would like that. I'm going to leave that ticked on. Auto move windows move applications to specific workspaces when they create windows. That could be interesting in some workflows. I'm not going to tick it on though. Clipboard indicators already ticked on. We already have cover flow alt tab. Dash to dock, of course, is already turned on. That's how we got this dock here. But I want to change this dock. I mentioned I would prefer it on the left. Let's see if I can put it on the left. Yep. I don't like how big the icons are. Right now they're set to 48 pixels. That's pretty big. Can we set that down to at least 32? Yeah, that looks pretty good. Position on the screen. Do we want dock size limit? Right now it's set to 90%. Of course, we could do it in panel mode. I like that. I don't mind that. But I can deal with it just being a normal dock centered along that side. What I don't like is that it's transparent. That makes it kind of hard to see against certain wallpapers using certain icon themes. I wonder if I could change the opacity. Right now the opacity is set to 100%. Can I change that to 100%? Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that. Alright, back to the tweak tool here. Extensions. We have a drop-down terminal. Okay. How do I activate the drop-down terminal? F12. Okay, let's try that. F12. Ah, very, very cool. I like that. Let me exit out of the terminal. Oh, I guess exit does not kill the drop-down terminal like it does every other terminal. You actually have to hit F12 again. Okay. We have GNOME menu. If I turn that on, I probably can't turn that on. Yeah, I can. It gives me another menu. I actually like this menu better than the other one. That's really cool, but we already had this other menu activated. So we got two different kinds of menus, alternate menus that we can turn on. That's if we didn't want to use like this standard way that GNOME sorts programs. I'm going to turn that one back off. That's pretty cool. We have a lot of extensions installed by default. Hello World is not ticked on anyway. Anyway, let me just scroll through here. There is a lot of extensions here. I like that. That's pretty neat. when I started this review, I said, basically, what is MagpieOS doing that, all the other Arch-based Linux distributions aren't already doing? In specific, what is the difference between MagpieOS GNOME and Antergos GNOME, which I really liked when I reviewed, or Manjaro's GNOME edition, or insert a dozen other Arch-based Linux distributions that use the GNOME desktop? One thing that I can say that's very unique about this is there's a lot of developer kind of programs on it. That's a plus. Actually, there's a lot of programs, period, installed on it. And these programs are on the ISO. We didn't have to download them from the internet like you would from an Antergos install. The Antergos install, the ISO is not that big when you download it. It's because the installer requires you to have a network connection, so it pulls all those packages that you install down from the internet. What if you don't have working internet? Well, you can't install Antergos. But Magpie, you can. The other thing I like is those extensions. I think that makes the GNOME desktop so much better, is to have a few extensions installed and enabled by default, but also they went ahead and installed a ton of other extensions. They just didn't bother enabling them yet, but if you wanted to, they're there for you. So I give the main dev of Magpie big props here. I'm actually pretty impressed with this. A lot of these Arch-based Linux distributions I think serve no purpose, but I'm going to give this guy credit. MagpieOS GNOME anyway, the GNOME edition, big thumbs up. I like the installer. I like the desktop. Now, before I go, there is one thing I need to do. I need to give a special thanks to all my patrons, all my Patreon supporters. A.K. Ron, Mr. Neelypops, John, Brian, Carl, Greg, Carlos, Rob, Matt, Darkwin, Mark, Christian, Jake, Benjamin, Stephen, Marcus, Interceptor, and Bob. You guys rock. You guys help make this show possible. Peace, guys.